key issue is humidity. I was down in Sydney for 3 years, and much drier heat down there. We've got the only bent greens on the Gold Coast now, so that was the biggest challenge. That was the and I suppose it was a massive challenge for me to take on the last bent greens up here on the Gold Coast. Obviously it's a very difficult place to maintain bent grass up here in Queensland, southeast Queensland. So that's definitely it. It's definitely the bent greens and finding a solution of getting through those tough 4 months. The two big ones up here would be Pythium and Fairy Ring. Fairy Ring was a big one for these greens. They got pretty damaged from them the year before. Last season I obviously wasn't here, and I spoke to Andrew, my assistant superintendent at the time, and we looked back on a few of the pictures, and it was probably some of the worst Fairy Ring I've ever seen attack bent greens in my career. I've seen 7 greens that had, you know, at least 10, 20, 30 metres squared bits of turf that had just welted out and actually died, and they had to re-turf them at the time, which I'd never seen Fairy Ring get that bad. So it was a massive problem, and obviously once you've got Fairy Ring in that soil, you're always going to be fighting the battle of it. So what I think about when it comes to, I suppose, any fungicide that I choose for our program is pretty much, you know, what's the mode of action, what are we going to get from it, and also, I suppose, is it a post, is it a pre fungicide, so, and how are we going to use that. So the biggest thing for me is I would rather be using fungicides as preventatively more than so as a post, as most turf managers would. So that was the biggest thing that we do, and the longevity of it, how long we're actually going to get out of that product compared to some other products as well. So that's the biggest thing that we think of when we are doing up the program at the start of every year, and we myself and the assistant will run through that and tick those boxes, I suppose. Pretty much we go out every fortnightly with a Pythium spray. We've used a product called Evolution for the Fairy Ring prevention, as a prevention, which has been fantastic. You know, we haven't seen one iota of a Fairy Ring disease in these greens, but we have seen it in our collars, in our tees, and in our fairways. So to say that, you know, that the product doesn't work, then you're crazy. So it's very intriguing for me to see, and for it to work is fantastic. So to find a prevention program has been absolutely massive for us here, and it's proof's in the pudding at the moment. So it's been really, really good to get through the stressful period and not worry too much about it. The biggest thing was, I suppose, the data that Curbs had. You know, Peter had he had a lot of data on it from using it in America, and the results that they had achieved over there with the tipiconazole and the zoxystroban at certain times. You know, I'd used previous products before and I had a pretty good result down in Sydney, but I've never seen a product work, you know, pretty much exactly the way the man behind the product said it was going to work. So we've had a great result with Evolution this year, and it'll be definitely in our programs next year as well. Yeah, so that's obviously where the studies that Peter had broke down the studies of and the data that he had collected. And it was really, really intriguing for me, and I enjoy reading certain data like that and finding out different ways of applying things. So we went out as soon as it pretty much hit 18 degrees, our soil temperature hit 18 degrees, and that was pretty much in, I think off the top of my head, the 3rd week of August. We went out with that. 30 days later we went out again with the product, and it's I think once it's in the profile of your green, you're kicking goals pretty much, because it's going to hold up against any disease pressure that you go on. Obviously you got your pathogens within the soil no matter what, so to just keep them restricted from coming up through the profile and into the leaf of the grass is the key at the moment. So and that's what we did. We restricted it well enough to get through the summer, and we haven't seen any damage, like I said. But the timing is everything. I think the timing is everything. If you miss it by a week or two, we were really on board of when we when we seen that actual temperature hit that 18 degrees, and we put it out pretty much the day of that. So it was just forever. We were always watching, ready to go, and we applied it, and that's the key. You can't miss it too much at all. You've got to be right on point on your programming and your planning, and getting all around it. And obviously, dealing with the studies that they had worked over in America, it was really pleasing to see it actually worked in our climate as well. That was always an issue. Obviously, it's a different humidity. It's a different obviously country. You're dealing with different varieties of bent grass. It was always a guessing game, and that's why I talked to Peter about it. I thought it was going to be very, very intriguing if this did work, but I was more than happy to give it a crack. And like I said, it'll be in our programs for the next few years for sure.